This is the unrestricted free agent.
Welcome into the program. Glad you're here. And I just pulled my microphone completely off the table.
I think South Carolina's catching Clemson. I really do.
Defense, I'm going to tell you right now, they're nasty. They're going to be nasty all year.
Coach Spurrier couldn't give a damn.
Who knows what's real and what's not even anymore.
When you see black and white and you're calling it purple, I got problems with that.
And LT, I told you, it's all about the tear talk.
How about that for a start? Off to quite a start this morning. Welcome in. Hope you guys are off to a good start yourselves. I got to hit the right button to really get us going here. Take this big sign off of our face. There we go. How about that? That was human error, not a technical issue that sometimes we deal with on the program. Glad you're along with us, live streaming from 8 to 10 every single weekday morning as college football kicks off in less than 11 hours. How about that? Less than 11 hours. We get college football tonight. That feels good to say. That feels real good to say. Feels good to see you guys up and rolling. Good morning, UFAs. Anthony in first this morning at 6:25. Attaboy, Anthony. Up and working hard as always. Jason, good morning. DC is already raising his hand, I believe. Is that emoji? Rogers bringing the sunshine attitude, as always. Josh is up with us. And Ken's bringing the good morning. I think that's how that's pronounced. Good to see you guys. And we got a lot to get to today. I mean, it is Thursday of the first week of college football. Tonight, 7 o'clock, ESPN, Backyard Brawl, West Virginia at Pitt. Great start to the season. Perfect, right? I mean, near perfect. Regional rivals. You got a team that's being hyped up pretty good in Pitt. You got another team that's completely under the radar. Lot to prove. Got a chance to go get a big win on the road to start the season. Relatively evenly matched teams, I think. You got college football drama at large looming. The timing of this is not a coincidence, right? The college football playoff board of whatever they call it, managers, governors, kings, princes. I don't know what it is. I don't know what they call themselves. Some board for the college football playoff set to meet tomorrow and could go ahead and expand this playoff just like that. And that's the crazy part, right? In college sports, things move so glacially most of the time. It's such a massive, what do you call those things? When you're in the ocean, you can't turn around. Not even just a cruise ship, like a battleship, right? That's what I'm thinking of. It takes forever to really make a move. But once you get going, it's tough to turn around. Once this college football playoff discussion happened, or I think now really what it comes down to is $450 million they've missed out on, I believe, is the number that I've seen by not expanding. All these guys, they go back and they talk to anyone associated with their university and like, come on, $450 million, we got to get our piece. We got to get a piece of that. I am fascinated by the hot takes out there on this college football playoff expansion, and we'll get to that. But first, we got a lot of Gamecock football to talk to specifically. Craig says, 2 days till I missed the first game. What do you miss the first game, Craig? And Chris on the YouTube or on the Facebook live stream. Everybody else popping in on YouTube this morning. Chris holding strong on the Facebook. Morning, fellow Gamecocks. Attaboy, Chris. Good to see you. Glad you guys are a part of the show. If you're new to the show and a bunch of people picking up on the Juice Wells stuff from yesterday. Well, wait a second. I can't just bring that up and not play it. Come on. I mean, it's just way too good. It's here. It's going to make me smile, so I'm going to play it for you.
I ain't going to lie. He's just going to go out there and kill him. You know, it's not too much to it. He's just going to go out there and ball. He's just going to go out there and kill him. He's just going to go out there and kill him.
So good. And Marcus Satterfield, the offensive coordinator, yesterday. Why don't we just start there? I'm not going to tell you what he said. I'll let him tell you about a bit of fallout, a little bit of fallout from Juice Wells, the transfer wide receiver from James Madison, saying that from the podium on Tuesday. Marcus Satterfield, the offensive coordinator, speaking in front of that same podium yesterday.
I mean, he's big and physical and runs his mouth too much in press conferences. But other than that, no, he came up to me downstairs and he goes, "Coach, I messed up." And I thought he was talking about in practice. I was waiting for him to say on that route. He's like, "I just said something in that press conference. I think I'm going to be in trouble." And he told me and laughed about it. But no, he's got an infectious personality. He's super competitive. Like, he loves the game. Got unbelievable respect from his teammates from how he practices. He's very durable. He's big. He's physical. He can stretch the field. He's got strong hands. He's improved since he's been here already, just as a route runner, just being able to get open. And it's not all just vertical things for him. So I'm looking for, good things, big things coming from Juice. He's a leader on our offense.
Interesting stuff there. From what I heard and from what I saw yesterday, it goes right into it, right? Concert in Asheville, Craig. That's an interesting choice, sir. You got to tell us who. I think you might have already. No. You can't go on and talk about how Marcus Satterfield talks after saying you're going to miss the first game because of a concert in Asheville and not give us the details on that, Craig. Yes, he might sound like he has a huge wad of spit in the back of his throat. Come on. We don't need to be mean-spirited on the program. But we do need to be accountable. Concert in Asheville, game 1, first full day of college football, especially the day that it is, while Notre Dame is playing Ohio State. Those 3:30 games, I'm guessing you're not going to be able to catch those if you got the concert in Nashville. Come on, Craig. Got to be accountable. Let's hear it. We'll get into it. But back to more football things at hand. And if you're just joining the show for the first time, this show will not take itself too seriously. I will not be shaking my fist too often or wagging my finger at you, telling you what you need to be thinking about sports. Hey, you get your own opinion. Unrestricted Free Agent is the title of the show. You're free to think what you want. You're free to go to concerts on the first night of college football. You're not free from the consequences of that or how that might change my opinion of you. Oh, Josh, it's so selfish, isn't it? You're missing the game because of a wedding reception. Man. Yeah, exactly, Chris. You missed a word there. Respectful events and weddings are planned around football. So disrespectful, Josh. It's all about them, huh? Her. We know it's all about her on the wedding days. And I wish her and him, I wish them good luck and all that, classy stuff. But on this show, especially if you're new to it, sometimes we got the technical issues off the top, not sounding underwater, not getting yelled at on the live chat this morning. So I'm assuming we're up and rolling. Everything's sounding good. Say a little bit more laid back, I'm thinking, than some shows. Especially the national stuff these days. You got to have a strong opinion. You got to yell about it and the whole thing. We're going to be real people on this show. Oh, what? Josh, this is disappointing. So first of all, it's your wife's boss who's having the wedding reception tomorrow night. Secondly, they got married in Vegas yesterday, and they're interrupting your Saturday night. Man, that's brutal. Brutal. What I saw yesterday, I'm wondering. Okay. Oh, that's right. Craig, you did fess up that you bought some tickets not realizing the date was the first game. I'm not smart, Tim, Craig says. May have had some drinks on the boat, bought some tickets. Fair. Couldn't you sell those tickets, Craig? Agree. DC, unacceptable, Josh. Yeah, brutal. All right, I'm wondering where our first guest falls in. Having heard Juice Wells, having been a former head coach, a longtime assistant coach, representing the Gamecocks with the hat today. Well done. Stuart Lake up first with us this morning. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. How are y'all?
Man, it's college football across the board. If we can't be in a good mood today, Stuart, I don't know when we can be in a good mood. All right, tell me, have you seen? Well, I'm not even going to ask. Have you seen it? Let's watch it one more time. It's 10 whole seconds, and it makes me smile every time I see it. I could watch it 1,000 times. James Madison, wide receiver, transfer, before playing a game at Carolina on Tuesday in his preview press conference, asked about what stands out about Georgia State, and here was his response.
I ain't gonna lie, he's just gonna go out there and kill him. You know, it's not too much to it. He's just gonna go out there and ball. He's just gonna go out there and kill him. He's just gonna go out there and kill him.
Okay, a little added effect with the editing. That's what I'm here for, Stuart. Your initial response when you hear or see that?
Well, my first response is I'm glad he's in a T-shirt and not a hooded sweatshirt and a scarf. I don't know where this football coach thing has come in that you got to look miserable the entire time. So it's good to see him in a nice sleeveless T-shirt, which I'm always a fan of. But I enjoy it. I mean, I didn't think he said we're going to kill a certain person. I mean, football's a physical game, and you could see just from his interview, he's excited. I mean, it's a chance to run out in front of the Gamecock crowd on Saturday night, and I'm glad they didn't have video back when I was playing. I'm sure I would have said something even more controversial, but no, I love that. I mean, you could see that it was an excitement as he said it, not a threat of any means. So I just think it's what you get when you let a player get in front of Mike 2-3 days before a game or 4, whatever it was. And I know they're busting at the seams to play. So I love it.
So tell me about bulletin board material then. Maybe not quite so much a thing in baseball. I mean, there is chatter back and forth for sure, and there's probably a lot more that goes on the field than we realize as fans typically. Mm-hmm. I think the general coaching perspective is you don't want to give the other team bulletin board material. But you also, to me, especially now in 2022, if Carolina football is all about authenticity and being real and the whole thing, there's that too.
Well, there's no doubt. Baseball is different. I mean, you can't really get fired up in baseball. You'd love to think you can, but, you can have some great song and run out on the field, and if your pitcher throws 8 straight balls, I mean, so baseball starts every game, the momentum of who's pitching. But football, you can, and that's what I loved about it when I was able to play high school football. It's what I still miss about it is you can have that energy. I can't imagine what it's going to look like Saturday night with all the new LED lights and everything going and that energy. If you're on the kickoff team or the kickoff receiving team, whichever gets to flip, you can take that energy out there. So football's based around that, and I love to see it. And if we're going to be inside the locker room like we are all season as we've kind of led up with the show, which, by the way, I found and now been able to watch some episodes of, then you love the authenticity.
You cursed me, by the way. I was like, yeah, it's not that difficult for me. I got YouTube TV. I just DVR it. It pops up when I'm ready for it. I go. I actually wanted to watch it with my kids a little bit last night before they went to bed, and it just didn't exist on YouTube TV for me last night. So if you guys got episode 4 in, you're going to have to tell me. I saw a little bit about Rattler and Satterfield, and again, we're going to let you hear a lot more from Marcus Satterfield as we move on today. So, Stuart, as a Gamecock fan, though, as a lifelong Gamecock guy growing up in the state of South Carolina, having seen a bunch of football through your years, you understand the other side of it, right? There were several Gamecock fans that hit me up on social media that watched that Juice Wells comment and that said, oh no, don't say that, man. Don't give those guys anything extra, or you can't say that kind of thing. It looks like the team's being overconfident kind of deal. You do get that, right?
I do. We say in baseball a lot, the baseball gods. I'm sure they're football gods too. I would think he'd have those lined up, but this really wasn't one of those to me. This is just one of those that it's preseason talk. Once the season gets started and you get into SEC play, you don't typically hear those kind of comments, but it's also one that, it shows confidence. We're South Carolina. You're not supposed to say, oh my gosh, I hope we have to play a perfect game to win by 3 against Georgia State. I like when guys Say we should be better, and we're going to go out and we're going to, I'm going to win my position. He didn't say he was going to kill at the quarterback position or at the linebacker. He's saying his position, and I think that's where a lot of times as fans we get so worried about what's been said. If he's ready to do his job and take care of his job, then he's answered that. I love it. Again, at some point you got to realize you're South Carolina, you're in the SEC. Well, we're supposed to win these games. And that's what I love about Coach Beamer is that let's win these games. Yeah, we may have to win by 3, but you're supposed to win these games. So let's not get wrapped up too much in a receiver saying something. Let's just go out and win the game and enjoy this.
Nick says, can't wait to see the entrance with the new lights, the sound system. I know everybody that will be at Williams-Brice Stadium is on board with that. Stuart, with that mindset of, oh no, how much do you feel like is Will Muschamp baggage as opposed to maybe the typical August preseason optimism, enthusiasm, especially where Steve Spurrier had the thing? Like, I think the number is something like 49-4. The Gamecock football team is all-time season openers against less than Power 5 non-conference opponents. I think it's a really good number. It's one of the few in Gamecock football history that is really, really good, and that's what we have here against Georgia State.
Yeah, I don't know. And in my mind as a fan, and I've moved on from that Muschamp era. I've just really bought into what we have now and the energy of it. And I just see so many positive things happening now that I've kind of let that go, and moved on. And the bowl win last year gave us a good feeling to go into this year. And we got an opportunity, as we talked last time I was with you, let's be in a nice warm bowl into this thing. Somewhere, I guess, in Florida would be good, or wherever else. But I'm just excited for the year. I don't know how we fall in the SEC because there's so many changes, but I mean, we have a quarterback that could really be a game changer for us. So I'm excited to see him get to play with the stadium full and just a real game. We haven't got to see that yet. Spring game is what it is, and different drills are what they are. But this will be exciting to see. This guy is one of the top-ranked quarterbacks in the country a year ago and still is. I'm excited to see that.
Oh, great transition. Stuart Lake is a pro there. You got another former Gamecock assistant coach, interim coach, and Shawn Elliott from Camden, South Carolina guy coming back to Williams-Brice Stadium. You just touched on Spencer Rattler. Well, why don't we hear what Shawn Elliott has to say about Spencer Rattler and the Gamecock offense?
What does Rattler bring to the table? You have to think a little bit more consistency in the throw game. You have to think their throwing game is going to be a little bit more enhanced. I think he's a quarterback that can make all the throws across the field, from your long post throws to your out routes across the field on the opposite hash. I mean, he's a quarterback. So there'll probably be a little bit more opportunity to go downfield. I think even though a lot of people say they did not run the ball well, I think they're going to probably lean towards letting him make the difference in this offense and make more throws.
Every single year, Stuart, you've been through the years, right? Even pre-Todd Ellis, you had the Mike Hold years. I mean, you can go back through the years. The Steve Tannehill years, way up there in my mind. Obviously, the Spurrier years with Connor Shaw, Dylan Thompson, Steven Garcia. You can go down the list. Anthony Wright. You're going to go back to the Brad Scott era, and then going into Lou Holtz with Corey Jenkins and Dondrell Pinkins and all the guys. It seems like, throw in Jake Bentley here relatively recently, when you get a new guy, it's always a big question mark and varied opinions from a Gamecock standpoint as the quarterback. And I think South Carolina fans have been waiting on that next quarterback, the guy, to take them to the promised land for a long, long time, man. Maybe Connor Shaw deserves a bunch of credit winning this quarterback in school history. Dylan Thompson had a good year after him. Since then, you haven't seen great quarterback play, but you never have had this with the transfer over from Oklahoma, where he was a preseason Heisman Trophy candidate, favorite actually, a year ago. What are you anticipating from Spencer Rattler? Because, hey, I don't know. None of us know for sure, and that's part of the fun of all this. What are you anticipating to see with your head maybe more than your heart, Stuart?
Yeah, well, it's what Coach Elliott was saying. I do expect us to be able to throw the ball down the field further. It seemed like just in the last couple of years we've had, one receiver. It felt like you were always one guy, and you felt like every pass was always in that 10 to 15-yard range, and let's pray he can break it for another 10 yards. So I expect to see is a legitimate NFL-type arm that can throw the ball down the field, that 30, 40-yard type passes and more that get your offense spread out. You and I, weeks ago, I talked about when I would go to practice at Ole Miss, all the guys out there were SEC quarterbacks, but then Eli Manning was a future superstar, and you could just see it. You could hear the pass. You could see the pass. You could notice in practice the routes were run 15 yards longer, and he could still throw it. And that's what I expect here, to see a guy that can throw the ball with more accuracy and strength down the field, which if you're able to do that, certainly spreads everything out, because I still think we can be a good running team. But until we see it on the field versus a different uniform, it's new to all of us. But that's what I hope to see.
It's fascinating, man. And more varied opinions, I feel like, within the Gamecock fan base about how Spencer Rattler is going to play and what to expect from him. A difference maker, I think, is a very fair expectation, and to raise the level of play. But I guess my question becomes, all right, how much difference can that guy make, especially having seen some suspect offensive line protection through the years, and knowing the guys who played last year or most of the guys who played this year. And it's going to take some improvement from there. Also, the guy that was calling plays last year is back this year, and it was a struggle last year. Marcus Satterfield asked about that at his press conference yesterday. The Big Spurs, John Whittle, with a little question and answer segment here.
You've taken really a lot of heat, at least outside of the building, over the last year. Are you just kind of ready to get this season started, just to rewrite the narrative on who you are as an offensive coordinator?
I guess. I mean, I'm proud of who I am as an offensive coordinator. I'd love to have seen a lot of coordinators out there that are considered gurus come and do what we did last year with 4 different quarterbacks in year number 1. So I'm very confident just what we were able to do. And then, I am excited just to go play somebody else this week and, start implanting what we're going to be this offense and building what we're going to be this season on offense.
I guess what you would expect to hear. Interesting, though. In an interesting spot. And I thought a very fair question to ask at this point, Stuart. What do you make of what you just heard from Marcus Satterfield, kind of defending himself rolling into year number 2?
Yeah, a very fair question. This will be what you really get to see. As he said, 4 quarterbacks last year, a lot of stuff that maybe we don't know that was going on with the offense from injuries. Sometimes guys aren't practicing and different things. But I think you're held accountable this year because we all feel like there's more pieces there to do things with. As you had mentioned, the offensive line, you hope a year older, hopefully better. The accountability is going to be very high early on. I don't think we can get too crazy of what we expect. I don't think we got to come out and score 56 points, Saturday to prove the offense is good. What would drive me nuts last year, and again, I'm a fan of football. I'm not a football coach, but it seemed like we'd be on the field for about 30 seconds and punting, and our defense would be out there with the old bend but don't break for about 8 minutes at a time. I would love to see an offense that keeps the ball and moves down, whether that first possession is a field goal or that first possession you can punt and pin them inside the 10. I'd just like to see the offense better do something that helps your defense. I just felt like last year sometimes we were you go to the bathroom, and if you didn't pause it, you were punting when you came back. I mean, it was like, how is it already 3rd down? But it seemed that way. So that's what I'm looking for as a fan.
Another professional transition. Well done, Stuart. You got this thing going today. We'll move over from offense to defense real quick. Let's hear from defensive coordinator Clayton White, just kind of about, you mentioned chip on the shoulder, or we had a comment there about chip on the shoulder is kind of what they got from Marcus Satterfield there. Clayton White is all about that philosophy.
The main thing about this group is that we want to make sure that we coach with a chip on our shoulder. I feel like every day I wake up, I have something to prove. And we're trying to give that mindset to our guys. We want the chip on our shoulder to be so big that you can't even turn around. Like, that's the mindset from day one. Like, we have something to prove. End of story. If you just have that mindset every single day, you can have good days, you can have ups and downs, but our mindset is, like, we have something to prove.
What do you make of that, Stuart? I know baseball and football, apples and oranges, right? You have to have a completely different demeanor. I mean, you do have to have shared similarities. You got to have intensity. You got to have focus, drive, determination, all of that. There is that. But from your era of expertise, when you play 56 games, is a lot different than playing 12 in the regular season. But when you hear chip on the shoulder from your defensive coordinator, I hear that and I say, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, it looked like that defense played that way in a lot of ways. What do you hear when you hear that from Clayton White?
Now, I would say as a football player, I was a defensive-minded guy. I didn't like offense. I didn't like learning all the plays, and I wanted to just play defense and hit people. And I get what he's saying. And I was very lucky when Coach Tanner was the master of keeping chips on our shoulders and continued to throughout his entire career to find ways to motivate guys. I look back in my career, that 2000 team that kind of started it all to get rolling. Boy, we had a chip on our shoulder the whole year because the year before we didn't make a regional. Remember, we won the SEC East in '99, but they said we're not good enough to even make a regional. And we kept that chip. And Coach Tanner would remind them when we were 20-0 and 40-2, just kept saying, same people going to be selecting this year said you weren't good enough last year. So you better keep winning. And that's what I feel like Coach is saying there is go out and dominate. Again, we said you don't have to have 56 points to have a good game, but I'd be disappointed if we came out this week and gave up 24 or 31 points because I think defensively we should be able to keep them in that 10, maybe 13 points at most type range based on the talent on the field. Again, let's stop dodging the bullet here. We're an SEC team playing a team from whichever conference Georgia State's in. I mean, let's go out and have that confidence. And that's what, as a Gamecock fan, that I enjoyed when our years were, even as a kid, you said the 84 team and, even 87, we had some super talented guys. And then again, at times with Coach Holtz and then Coach Spurrier, let's stop worrying about what's around the corner. Let's just take care of this business right now. And that's what I want to see this weekend. I just want to see them come out and play a full solid game because it's a big game. Because then next week you're on the road at Arkansas. If we're talking next week, then yeah, you can't be making those statements maybe in press conferences going on the road to play in the SEC. But I love the confidence when you're playing at home, and I get the chip on the shoulder for sure.
Sun Belt. That's where Georgia State sits.
There you go.
And man, I was looking just into their season last year, a little bit more today. And it's fascinating to see because North Carolina absolutely blew them out. And then Troy got handled. Georgia State handled Troy. So those are a couple of common opponents last year that South Carolina ended up whipping North Carolina in the bowl game and struggled to a 9-point win against Troy. So that's all you really need to know about college football to me, right? We can get really serious, hop up on our high horses and say, no. Well, this happened against this team, so this is going to happen, and they're strong or they're light on the defensive line, and Carolina's going to try to exploit that. And we don't know. We don't know. Get out of here, man. That's a fascinating part. And I want to hear your opinion. You've been here. You've been an assistant coach at an SEC program, and then you became a head coach at a smaller program. And you returned to the former school, and you ended up beating that former school at one time for sure back at Charleston Southern back in the day. That's exactly what Shawn Elliott is planning on doing. Wanted to let you hear what he had to say, and then if you can, give us your experience on that and what you think he might be going through based off of your experience.
And walking back into Williams-Brice, to be on the other sideline is something that I've never had to do, to be honest with you. Maybe a scrimmage I was over there one day, but it's going to be thrilling. All honesty, it's going to be awesome. Going back in there to play the University of South Carolina. Grew up 25 miles away. A lot of games that I watched there, a lot of games that I've I've won there, won a state championship there, and now we're taking our team, the Georgia State Panthers, back there to open up our season. So, yeah, that's going to be, hopefully a great night.
Sounded like a coach talking at a press conference, making sure he says what needs to be said. What do you think Shawn Elliott is feeling having done that yourself, Stuart?
I'm like Shawn Elliott. I mean, I've grown up 25 miles the other way. He's from Camden. I was over here in Prosperity area. So I grew up the same way. Now, when I came back to play South Carolina, Sarge Fry was a lot harder to me. I came back to Sarge Fry in the Ole Miss dugout. I came back to Sarge Fry. I was at the Citadel. Those memories and what I had there was really hard because that's where I had coached. That's where I had felt like everything in my career had happened. Then to come back to Founders Park, which is where we were able to come back with a really good team when we beat the Gamecocks, felt a little different to me because I hadn't coached in Founders Park at that time. I hadn't really had it. So for Shawn Elliott, this is coming back to Sarge Fry Field for him. I mean, this is where he as a kid too grew up coming to games. He talked about it a bunch that year, became interim. So I respect him because I know how bad he wanted the job, which he should have. And he's gone on down to Georgia State and done a great job. So as I said earlier, it's not a disrespect to what he's doing at Georgia State. It's a respect, as I said, what conference are they in, more of to, hey, let's have confidence in ourselves. Let's realize that the cool thing about football is you're supposed to be better. This is, as I told you in baseball, when we came in that night and were able to beat the Gamecocks, it's because of the guys I had on the mound. I think we only scored maybe 3 or 4 or 5 runs that night to win, but they only scored 1 or 2. So you got to expect that he's going to come in. He's going to have his team ready. I mean, there's no doubt. I still see him running out with the old visor. I wonder if maybe he'll run out with one then. I'll never forget him running out that first game as an interim doing that. But, his team will be jacked up. I mean, there's no question about that because they'll feed off his emotion. I know he'll be confident, but you could also tell there's a guy that's going to enjoy it too because you don't get to come back. You just don't get to come back into this environment. He'll go back, and they got a great setting now. I think they've got the old – it's not Turner Field. Maybe it was called Turner Field. They've turned it into a cool environment, but it ain't going to be Williams-Brice, and he knows that. I think he's going to enjoy it, and he's going to have his team, and they're going to play hard for him because they're going to see that honest feeling with him.
In that way, I think it's a pretty ideal opener this year. Now, you can look at it multiple ways, right? You don't get a lot of credit for beating Georgia State when you're South Carolina. Nobody's going to say, oh, wow, look at that marquee win for Shane Beamer in year number 2. But you also don't have an Eastern Illinois on the schedule like last year where you just showed up and you should win by 46 points and not let them score. They didn't even play a great game, and that happened. I remember a 3-and-out to start the season. I was like, oh, wow, that all that preseason talk, and then you get that, like you're talking about, the 30 seconds, you can't even turn around before you got a punt. Okay, but the final score, not quite indicative of that. But this year, this is right smack in the middle. We've seen a bunch of ACC openers, right, with Carolina and the Charlotte games. We saw East Carolina up in Charlotte one time. But to have this kind of personal connection, a couple of personal connections, Shawn Elliott being the number 1, and then Jamias Williams being the former Gamecock running back now at Georgia State, to have that involved to me, and then to have Georgia State, 72, I think I saw in the preseason magazine is kind of where they're projected out of 130 plus teams in the country, right? Kind of right smack in the middle. And that's pretty good for a Sun Belt team for sure. A team that's won 8 games, won a few bowl games in a row. So it's not, you can do whatever you want to and go out there and you're going to win. It's also not, if you play your best, you should really be in a dogfight through 4 quarters. To me, it's right there in that sweet spot. You with that from a season opener standpoint, or do you see it a little differently?
No, I do. I actually this summer asked Coach Tanner, I said, how did this game get on the schedule? Because really it's only been a few years since Coach Elliott's gone. And as he kind of told me, it was one of those, he never told me who, but someone else was originally scheduled in this game, got dropped, whatever, we're able to pick him up because of the connection with Shawn Elliott, and he wanted to come back here and play in the right way. He wants to come back. Again, the guy grew up in Camden. I get it. He wanted to come back here and play, not because I'm going to put together my best team for 2022, but it was an opportunity. Usually, as I joke around, it's 25 years. They'll say, Tim Hill's going to play Stuart Lake in 2041. And you're like, okay, that's really building up the excitement. So I asked him how that had happened so quick, and that's how. And I think it's a great way to get it started and to get to be a night game, because I don't know how many night games we'll have this year as you really look at it. I mean, Georgia, obviously, we already know is noon. You may get in a lot of those day games depending on how our season's going. So it really is nice to have a night game with a team that I agree with you. You feel like you should. I've already said I feel like we should win, but no, I don't think it should be like last year. I went to the opener last year, and by halftime, you're like the commercial. Hey, you want to leave at halftime? It wasn't fun, to be honest. And I think in this one, you'll see your number ones on the field. I hope they're out in the fourth quarter, but you feel like they're probably going to be in there starting the fourth quarter. You don't feel like it'll be one of those games. So I think a great opener.
-12, I think, is where I've seen the line most. 11.5, somewhere in there, just from a Vegas perspective for the Gamecocks opener. Wanted to let you hear a little bit more from the Carolina defensive coordinator, Clayton White. I'd never heard this phrase before. I'm wondering if you've heard it, and I don't think it quite applies. Monty Lee in his introductory press conference the other day coming back to Carolina, I'd never heard the Buffaloes and Deers deal. Either you're Buffalo or a Deer. Is that a Monty thing in baseball, or is that kind of a given in baseball, Stuart?
No, I think that might be the Hunter
right
kind of stuff. Yeah, I've never used that one either. So that's not commonplace to be said. No.
All right, Clayton White's got a more direct football analogy. He was asked about the improved depth, what he's thinking about his defensive line, especially on the interior. I really enjoy this answer. I'm guessing you might as well.
When you play in the Southeastern Conference, you have to have mass because mass kicks. But yes, so the more of those guys we have, the better off we're going to have a chance to play meaningful football in the month of November. Because it's a physical league. It's a physical 14 weeks, however we're going to do this thing. But mass kicks, boom, and you have it in November. That's the ultimate goal. But the more guys we have, the better off the Gamecocks are going to be.
What do you think? You ever heard that about mass? I can see how it applies from SEC power hitters for sure. But I have heard that is the main difference between the SEC and a lot of other leagues in college football. Those interior guys along the line, they have to be absolute monsters just to give yourself a chance.
Yeah, no, I haven't, but I'm disappointed a wrestler hadn't used that too. That could have been maybe The Rock did, and it slipped by us. But no, we look back and you remember a few years ago, it was those Alabama LSU double headers, it seemed, because they played during the season, then they'd meet again. And you just think back to how big and dominant their defensive line was. And think about how big and dominant our defensive line was in that Coach Spurrier era. Although he's known as an offensive guy, and we did have Connor Shaw and some great players, the play that we all remember is the defensive line. I mean, it just dominated games. And as we said, teams were punting after 3 plays. It wasn't a case where they were driving and having 8, 10, 12 plays on our defense back then. So I like that analogy. And Coach White looks like a guy, I bet his meetings are short. He doesn't look like a guy that needs to stand up in front of the room and talk very long. So I enjoy his press conference. He seems kind of short and to the point.
No doubt about it. And all business and can get frustrated real quick. You want to get more of his personality. It happened towards the end of his press appearance yesterday. So just for point of reference, like you're talking about length of time, and this always comes up with Dabo Swinney's just marathon press conferences that seem to last forever. Dave Odom was that way from a Carolina perspective back in the day. Lou Holtz's press conference certainly would go longer than Steve Spurrier's. Well, the thing was, I talked about this, it was yesterday or the day before. I guess it was the day before when Carolina's depth chart actually came out, and how Will Muschamp never got it. And he would ridicule anybody asking questions about the depth chart because that's just something that coaches put out, and media especially overanalyzes the whole thing. Well, Clayton White's very similar, right? He challenged everybody, hey, let's don't even bring up those words depth chart. Let's see if we can do that here. So he's playing with him. So then the Big Spurs John Whittle had a little fun with him towards the end of the press conference, and then Clayton White had some fun back. Wanted to let you see this little Q&A starting with the Big Spurs John Whittle.
Where does your shirt sit on your polo depth chart?
This shirt, I get this from Larry. Gave this to us last year. This is the first season press conference. I literally went through the thing and I actually said this is the one for the day. So to this week it was first in line. My closet's kind of color coded, so it was kind of easy to get to it. Yes.
When you've got two, this is kind of an X's and O's question, but when you got two wide receivers running a rub route or a pick route or whatever you guys like to call it, who's more likely to get picked? Is it the slot corner or is it the outside guy, or does it depend on the offense or what they're doing?
What's your name again, sir? Richard. That's a question. All right. That's the kind of question that football coaches want. That was decent. That was a decent question, but that's a question. That's a question. All right. So his question was, some of you guys that may not understand what he's talking about, that sounds like a mid-level question. So when two receivers are trying to pick each other, the guy that's on the inside is more likely the one to get bumped into.
Man, I love watching a coach enjoy a press conference like that. Have a little fun. Not take himself so seriously. To me, that's a sign of, first of all, confidence in who you are as a coach and where you are. Clayton White had a great year last year. His career is just on the skyrocketing trajectory right now. But he's also a really serious football dude. And I saw him. I sat near him, Stuart, last year, the Birdies with Beamer thing. I didn't even realize he had just kind of ended up sitting at my table while we were eating lunch. And right after lunch, Beamer takes the podium, right? So as Shane Beamer's doing his press conference back and forth with reporters back there, Clayton White, I see this guy getting kind of agitated, like just exhaling with some of these questions. And he'd just be like, how can you... So you can see kind of his frustration with some of these questions that get just the mindset's totally different than his. And then when it got into a football question, he is all into it and able to have fun. Is your closet color coded? Let's start there, Stuart. That was what really stuck out to me in all of that.
Well, I appreciate that too. I don't know if I'm as color coded as he said, but I do have a lot of garnet and black stuff in my closet, so it'd be hard to ever go somewhere else and work. But any press conference where a guy takes his shirt and wipes his head off from sweat, I'm in. That to me that's when I was in for whatever happened after that point. I never understand at press conferences why we don't have a good fan blowing. It wouldn't be that hard to have a nice fan blowing or at least a towel of some sort. He had to pull his shirt out, wipe his forehead with it. And once you do that, you got me. I'm in. I'm on your side from then on out. But no, the color coded, my wife actually asked me the other day, some of those shirts, when did you get those? Because I keep everything that's Carolina I've got my Ole Miss stuff, somewhere in a box, and I got CSU stuff in a box. But yeah, I don't know. I'm garnet black and an occasional white shirt stuck in there, maybe a gray one. So that's good stuff.
Wait a second. I thought the standard, at least in how my closet works, is length. I'm much more of a length than a colors guy, right? You got all the long sleeves over here, the short sleeves. I'm a length organization guy, or like a temperature kind of deal, as opposed to color. I don't care about colors, man. No. I got no clue. Maybe I'm just not as stylish as Clayton White.
Well, now that you say it, that's what mine is. I've got long sleeve stuff, and short sleeve stuff. And then on the very end, the way mine is stuff you really hardly ever wear, maybe a good T-shirt or something you felt you needed to hang up. But, yeah, that's where it's at.
Whoa. You got T-shirts that you've had to hang up?
Yeah. You don't?
It's big time. No way, man. Fold them up, throw them in the drawer.
No, these T-shirts, Tim, aren't like what you're thinking. These are my wrestling T-shirts. You can't fold those up. So I've got all my Ric Flair shirt. I've got an old Rock and Roll Express T-shirt hanging. These aren't just like T-shirts hanging. These are things that if you folded them up would mess up the dynamic I've got my several Hulk Hogan shirts, SummerSlam shirt. For when they come into town, I don't just wear a shirt to wrestling. You choose what you're going to wear, and I want them to be ready to go because you never know when they surprise you with a quick card at the, at Township or something. So, yeah, those are the type shirts I'm talking about. T-shirt.
Wow, that's fantastic. Those are basically cotton works of art. I didn't mean any disrespect. My apologies. I hope we can move on from this. It's turned out to be a bit of a lightning rod situation here on the live chat. Chris says, I hang up all my T-shirts. Yeah. Too many to put in drawers. Ken's is with me. Hang up the polo shirts, fold the T-shirts. Yeah. But then, like trying to fold a fitted sheet, just ball it up, throw it in the drawer. Nick, attaboy. That's more my style for sure. My one of the reasons for showing Clayton White in that little Q&A there is also it's an appreciation that we get to hear from the defensive coordinator of the University of South Carolina, and we get to do it every single week in both of those ways, right? We just heard an X's and O's question. We heard him take a dig at media boys for not knowing anything about football. He can't even figure out, all right, what's a rub route? He's like, let me explain it to you guys because clearly your questions show you don't know much. But then he gets to have some fun. And also, it's more of an accountability thing and letting us, Stuart, you've been there as a coach, man. Being a media nerd for as long as I have been, it is very clear to me, and having played just a little bit of college athletics, you got in the locker room and you got everybody else, right? And I get there's this game where somewhere in between you got press conferences and guys asking questions, and you got some players and coaches that are answering those questions, but it will never be 100% in the locker room is what you get as the public messaging on the outside and the whole thing. It is, and that's part of the beauty of it, right? When you're on the team, you're on the team. If you're not on the team, even if you're a fan, even if you're talking about it every single day as a profession, it's just different. You're on the outside. So that little game that coaches and players get to play is really interesting in so many ways, and it does have an impact on your program. Who was I hearing yesterday? Pete Lembo was talking about it, the special teams coordinator, about early season success. You got to have two things. Number one, you got to have a strong culture. And from a culture standpoint, I feel like that's where we get to get a better understanding of where these coaches and players are at in this public exchange a lot of times. Number two, the Pete Lembo mentioned you can't beat yourself in early season football games. But what do you make of that, having been there as a head coach, having been there as an assistant coach, having seen it from all different angles and as a player as well, Stuart?
Yeah, there's no doubt. You summed it up. You're totally different when you're in that locker room and the things you say, because once you do get out, as we said, you don't want bulletin board material. You also you don't want to get out there and be too over the top just to represent your school and your program. But in the locker room, you get to enjoy that. And you get to say the things that I probably said this morning that, hey, we're supposed to win this game. Let's not fool ourselves. We're supposed to win this game, but Coach Beamer can't come on and say that.
Right.
I mean, you just can't. And he respects, too much of other coaches. You respect it, but you get to do it. And that is the cool part. That's why as coaches, I always tell guys when they call me, play as long as they'll let you. A lot of times that means pro ball when they'll call you and go, Coach, I think I'm going to shut it down, or are they going to give you a contract? Yeah. Well, play till they quit paying you, because you're not old. I know 27 seems like you've been doing it a while, but keep doing this, because once you are out of that locker room, you miss it. And I miss those conversations even now, to get to do it, because you get to be a different person in there. But it is cool to see the coordinators and getting to know your program. I think we've done a great job. The university has this summer letting us see inside the building. And I think it's going to do a lot for our fans to have seen the leading up to the season, what's going on over there and different things. Even though the internet's good at it now, it's been cool to see that. Kind of the Hard Knocks version of Gamecocks football. And I think that's going to be a real plus to see that there are people inside those helmets. It really is harder to boo and scream at guys once you realize what they do and how hard they work and that they care. I think a lot of times as fans, we forget that they do care as well. So I think it's been an awesome thing for our football program this summer.
who's the best that you've seen at handling situations? I always thought he just gets it was something that an experienced media person told me when I was covering South Carolina baseball for the first time out in Omaha, I think in what was that, 03? That was the first time I came back to town, got to go out to the College World Series in the middle of that first 3-year run. And I never forget someone that had been doing it for a while. It's like, after talking to Coach Tanner for, the usual deal, he's like, oh, he just gets it. And to me, that's like saying, oh, he's a foxhole guy. Like that ultimate compliment from a media standpoint. He just gets it. Ray Tanner was really good at it. Is there anyone else that comes to your mind as someone who just gets this game? Like Shane Beamer, obviously, is a guy who gets it. You can have a little fun. You can go off a little emotional rant sometimes after a Georgia team beats you on their way to a national championship. There is wiggle room in there. Like to me, Will Muschamp was one of the worst at it. But the version of Will Muschamp that we got at South Carolina, especially coming off the Florida tenure and just everything that had happened in the environment there. Steve Spurrier, I put up way at the top just because he was uniquely him, and it was always going to be unique. Lou Holtz, obviously legendary as well. What about your perspective? What some guys that really got it, or any kind of examples that you'd like to throw our way?
Yeah, just in my career, I've felt like I've been around a lot of guys. Just when I got here, Brad Scott was on the way out. That was his season. My first year is when he got fired at the end of that season. And then I get to watch Lou Holtz, who obviously was one of the best at doing the press. And then, gosh, I go to Ole Miss and I get to watch the birth of Ed Ogeron on the media scene. Sometimes you learn what not to do. I'll never forget one of his press conferences. He forgot to take his briefcase off. So he's doing this press conference while holding the big leather briefcase. And I would go to him. Me and Dan McDonnell were the same kind. Like I did it at South Carolina. I was like it at Ole Miss. I love Jamie Chadwell at Charleston Southern. I love going to these press conferences as a coach / fan. But Dan and I are kind of looking at each other like, what's he doing? And finally a media guy says, Coach, what you got in that bag? And he just turned to him like he didn't even realize he was on camera and said, none of your damn business what I got in this bag. And me and Dan just died because we're like, how's he going to survive? This is like week 2. Well, obviously there he didn't very long, but no, Mike Bianco was fantastic. Obviously Coach Tanner to me was a guy that we would listen to, and hopefully I took a lot of that with me as I got to do press conferences and do things that what I always thought he did is the players knew there was something more and he wasn't going to ever reveal it. He was never going to, like kind of we saw this weekend with Nebraska when the coach is blaming. You knew that was never going to happen with Coach Tanner. Even if it was your fault, he was going to go out there and say he should have done A, B, or C. It was never we should have or he should have. And I just, I've been around great coaches. And I've been very fortunate to just watch a lot of guys, as you say, that I think just get it. And I've really paid attention because, as I said, I'm at CSU and nobody knew who Jamie Chadwell was. But I kept telling people, man, this guy's he like that. I would say he gets it. I was going to football practices and hanging out, and it's so cool to see their success at Coastal and wherever if he ever leaves there. I don't know if he'll ever leave because he loves it so much there, but those guys get it, and they're fun to listen to, and you enjoy the press conferences.
Yeah, that's a great example, Jamie Chadwell right now. I mean, a guy who has ascended in college football from someone who was barely known in the state of South Carolina outside of Charleston a couple of years ago, and now has been a national name, getting acclaim for his offense. But it's not just that. You're right. I mean, he's got the mustache going this year. He and his quarterback are all into the mullets and the teal confidence and the whole thing, man. That's all part of it. To me, it all goes back to culture is why I bring it up, right? Not just some stupid media game and the whole thing. It's all into the culture. And I think in this post-Muschamp era now, in this Shane Beamer era, I'm coming to appreciate, and maybe it's just where we are in 2022 as well, Stuart. Maybe it's where South Carolina football is specifically. I heard Shawn Elliott say this. He said, at Georgia State, we have to do things differently to be successful. You never heard that at South Carolina, I don't think, before now. Or you never, at least I never felt that. I heard Lou Holtz talk about you got to change the culture and the whole thing, but that sounded like coach speak and him trying to make South Carolina anywhere close to what Notre Dame was. Steve Spurrier always was used to winning, and he wanted to make sure to get the program back to anywhere close to where Florida was, right? Will Muschamp just wanted to prove himself in a lot of ways as a head coach, and I think some of that, this is about me, rubbed off on his team. Pete Lembo had a fascinating answer yesterday. I want to let you guys hear about it. This is kind of playing off culture. I don't even remember the specific question here, but his kind of summary right now of where Gamecock football and the coaching staff is, I think, gives us a really good insight into where this program is from a culture standpoint heading into game number 1 in 2022.
I really love the guys I get to work with every day, and we're all so different. You know, we all have different personalities, and we all have our quirks, of course, but it's a great group of guys. And, you know, when you look at our staff, a lot of us are guys that came up from the smaller school ranks. You know, Clayton spent time, obviously, at Western Kentucky, but at UConn. And, of course, you know, my career at the FCS and Group of 5 level, and I coached Division III football early in my career. Sat was an FCS coach. You know, Jimmy Lindsay coached at Furman, and Stepp went to Furman. And so, you know, you look at our staff, you know, Greg Atkins at Marshall all those years as a player and as a coach. And so when you have guys like that, I think there's a mindset every day that you're grateful to be here, and you don't take it for granted that you're here. You don't get spoiled, and you don't feel entitled. You don't think you should roll into work and be on a cruise ship every day. You know, when you get a meal provided, you're thankful to get that meal. You're not saying this meal isn't good enough. No, you're grateful to get that meal. And I think that trickles down to the kids, because if the coaches are grateful and appreciative and humble and show that they're a team and a unified front, then you're more likely to get that out of the players.
What do you think, Stuart, about what you just heard from Pete Lembo?
I love it, because in the SEC, you do get spoiled. And I feel the same way. I felt like a lot of times Coach Muschamp just felt like he had to keep telling us how hard he was working and how much he cared. We all knew that. I grew up, my dad poured asphalt for a living. Okay. We don't have air conditioning in my parents' house now because he thinks it makes you soft. He's 80 years old. Okay. I grew up with dudes that didn't come home every day and tell us how hard he worked. He came home and continued to cut grass and work in the shop. And that's why me and my brother are the way we are. I appreciate people that have a great job. And what Coach Lembo just said, this ain't a cruise ship. If you think every day is supposed to be something, I love that statement. And that's what I feel like. I hear the culture. I mean, everybody wants to talk about building a family. Well, when you go on vacation, you don't chant family every 5 minutes. It is, you develop it. It is what it is. It's because of the way you get treated and the way you treat people at work. And my son laughs at me because I hated to break down on 1, 2, 3 family. We never did that in my life, and I had the closest family ever. I don't mean to go on a tangent here, but
love it.
If you got to keep telling each other your family, then you got something going on with your family. How about just be family? Show up every day, work your tail off. There's a piece of trash laying there, pick it up. Don't ask who threw it on the ground. And that's how I was raised. And that's what wore me out with the Muschamp era was, dude, I know you care. And, hey, I know you're smart. I know you don't have to keep telling us and showing us. And that's what Coach Beamer's made it to me as a fan. He made it just fun again to watch stuff. You know, you just don't have to hear about how I'm going to be intense. Well, that's great. Coach Muschamp forearming the board was guys went out and pushed them. I mean, the players are playing. We need players that are going to do that. And I feel like Coach Beamer and his staff have made it again about the players. And that's what's cool about it. And that's what I look forward to seeing. But, yeah, come off my soapbox there, but I love that one. I think that's been some of the greatest things a coach could say. And to hear, I didn't even realize where some of the guys were from. That was every day I used to walk into Founders, I would kind of pinch myself and enjoy it. When you start walking into Founders Park or you start walking into the football building of Williams-Brice and it ain't a big deal, then you probably need to do something else, because your players are going to realize too, it ain't a big deal. And that's what you never want them to think. This is a big deal, and what they have there is a big deal. So it's cool to see that and hear that from the coaches.
It's fascinating to me, Stuart, because as you're talking about it, I was trying to go back through Muschamp's tenure, right? He was that guy that pulled himself up by the bootstraps in a lot of ways, was a walk-on player, should have been able to develop that mentality with his programs, always talking about blue collar, right? But to your point, if you're talking about it instead of being about it, and Shane Beamer is the exact opposite, right? He is the son of a Hall of Fame college football coach. He instantly jumped into the SEC as a GA and never left the top levels of college football. If anybody should be spoiled by college football at its highest level, it's Shane Beamer, right? But the fact that he can do what he did a couple of weeks ago, put that social media video out about this is part of our why, that he can connect on that level, I think that's kind of his superpower right now in a lot of ways. And obviously that kind of translates down the coaching staff, as you heard from Pete Lembo.
No doubt. Just a few weeks ago, and Hayden got a letter from Virginia Tech inviting him to baseball camp, and my wife gets the envelope and comes over and says, Beamer Way. So their athletic department was on Beamer Way. She goes, I didn't realize he was that good at Virginia Tech, and my wife's a sports fan. And I said, yeah. And she goes, that's pretty cool. But you wouldn't know that watching him either. He don't sit up there and tell you you're supposed to respect him because his dad has the avenue named or won so many games. I just respect the way he handles it. And when I asked him, when I got to talk to him a few times when I was still there, he never really talked about himself. I had to pick his brain of what did you play? Because my son's a long snapper. So that kind of connected us a little bit because he was a snapper. And he just talked about being lucky to be on the team. I had to find ways to be on the team that I earned. And that was a way I could do it, a receiver, a long snap, whatever. He never acted like, oh, yeah, well, my dad was a coach. Of course I was on the team. That never came across in listening to him describe himself. And that hadn't been him now in his first chance being a head coach.
No doubt about it, man. Roger weighing in on the live chat says, this is Jason. I'm now demanding a Stuart Lake, Ed Orgeron impression story every week with the LOL. That was a good one with the satchel still on the shoulders there at the press conference. None of your business. Good stuff, man. So think maybe you can have one ready to go. I don't even know if you need it. I'm guessing you got plenty just right off the top of the head ready to go every single time there, Stuart.
Yeah, that's some of my favorite stories because I would Coach O would come to all our staff meetings and everybody comes, and Dan and I would make sure to sit with the football coaches because we wanted to hear the things he was saying just in the prep. I don't know if he couldn't hear or he wasn't paying attention, but someone would say something that he would just loudly turn to an assistant and say, what did he say? And it would just be at the most inappropriate time. And I found myself at times answering him. The football guys, it's such a small town, you all live beside each other. And when we got through one day and one of the coaches said, I'm not too sure he don't think you and Dan are on our staff. He goes, I'm expecting one day him to ask where y'all are at a meeting because we sat with them all the time to listen to just the things he said were a reality show in itself. I could give you one a week for several weeks.
Oh, fantastic. I can't wait to hear the next edition of that. I'm just like these guys, man. I know you have some news. Do you want to put that news out there? Or are we going to keep that under wraps right now, Stuart?
No, I'm excited. I get to come back. I'll start next Tuesday in Gamecock Club, and they've got me kind of doing different things, but I'm excited to get to be coming back on campus every morning. And I'm going to still figure out how me and you get to do this because I love doing it. But I'm excited. I think it's a great time to be coming back, help raise money to just continue to get our program going forward. And there's some great people down in that part of the building that you hardly ever talk about. So I get to kind of go learn and be one of those and see how I can help. So I'm excited to be coming back. It helps too. I got a lot of shirts I can wear to work. So, and I'll go get them color range now if I don't go garnet 2 days in a row and have people laughing behind my back. So, but I'll mix them up.
Speaking of that, Teddy D said, wow, those shirts sound awesome. Please unpack that topic more. Can you hold up your Rock and Roll Express shirt? So next time you're on, you got to make sure to bring the T-shirts as well.
Okay, well they're very accessible, so that won't be hard. I've got them all hanging. They've made the trip through all our apartments and houses, and my wife's put them to the side and hoped I'd forget them, but I'm never going to forget my T-shirts. So they made their way with me.
And don't forget us here, just the little show that could. Now that you're going off to Gamecock Club fame, and if anybody ever has a Gamecock Club issues, Stuart Lake's going to be your guy now, right?
Yeah, sure. That'll be the call me. I'll make sure to get the right answer. I'll be that guy. But no, I do. I'm excited for it. I appreciate the opportunity and get to be around and on campus again. I haven't been down in a year or so as regularly, so I've missed that.
Great to have you today, man. We'll do it again soon, hopefully, and good luck with the new gig.
Thank you so much.
Stuart Lake, ladies and gentlemen, as we make the transition over to my buddy Mike Gillespie, who looks confused, maybe a little flustered right now in this early hour for a guy who does the 11 o'clock news. You look like there he is. He just fell asleep. ABC Columbia Sports Director Mike Gillespie coming on with the bitter TV attitude and the coffee in hand. I love it.
There's not enough coffee in the world for this.
What happened last night, man? Big night out? What's going on?
Dude, I'm 33. Come on.
I'm 44. Stop it. Don't play that card with me, man.
Well,
I don't want to hear it.
Still,
have three. Wait till you have 3 kids.
Oh, I've got one right here.
Yeah, you're right. And then that one is bigger than my 2-year-old. There's no doubt about it. Okay.
Lots of hair as well.
Jason says Mike is hungover. How about that? This is the hangover hour. Perfect. It's a great start. I love it.
You might not be wrong. Yeah.
Good for you.
I have no good stories from last night. It's just,
one of those.
Yeah, just me drinking alone in the corner. Nah,
well, dude, it's September 1st. And
yes, that's true.
From your perspective, I'm guessing it has been the most work-intensive month of the year. I think if I go back to having done your job, I think August was usually the biggest year. And the amount of relief I felt, I think you might feel tomorrow night around midnight-ish, or maybe after 7:45 or so, after your preview, your Gamecock preview special airs.
Yep.
Then it's kind of it's fun after that. The days and the weeks just boom, boom, boom. You got football season, you're in the routine, the whole thing. But you've really put in the work here recently, huh?
Yeah. So we've got a football special tomorrow. It's 30 minutes this year, though, which is very different than
so weak.
It is. It's awful. That was not my call. But yeah, no, it's only 30 minutes. And literally, man, I'm putting this thing together the entire summer. Because my weekend guy, I knew he was leaving. He had this job in Charlotte set up for a while. So I was like, well, I'm going to be solo for a little while. So I'm going to start early. And so I started putting together a whole hour show. And then they come to me a month ago and they're like, oh, by the way, delivering mail, just so casually, just, oh, hey, by the way, it's 30 minutes. I'm like, huh? What? Excuse me? 30 minutes? This is the first time I've started this thing early and not the night before. What are you talking about? So that was the hardest part, is just taking all of this material, right? Trying to preview, because now, we're doing South Carolina and Clemson in our show, and trying to preview those guys in 19 minutes, I think, is what we get.
Oh man.
So
what a great great problem to have on your end. First
It's
of
good.
all,
Yeah, no. I'm not complaining too much, except for the fact that this is the one year that I actually was like
ready to go. Smart.
responsible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much smarter and more well prepared than I ever was. I was
Oh,
always
sure.
there through the night before,
Oh.
like just at 6 a.m. I finally finish it, and then something would go wrong or whatever.
You
But
think I look bad this morning? I remember 2015. You pulled an all nighter. You were there. I think I was in for like no, it was I don't remember what it was. Maybe a press conference like
Right.
on a Tuesday or something. And I just looked at you and I couldn't even see your eyeballs.
That sounds right.
We're so sunken in.
There's only one computer in the old sports
Yeah.
office. There's only one person who can push those
Yeah.
buttons. So
Yeah.
I wasn't going to let anybody else in there, man.
No.
But as far as outlook now on this season, to me, that kind of sums it up what you're talking about, that you feel like you can't get all the material in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I think that's what a lot of Gamecock fans are feeling. That's part of the environment, the enthusiasm, the whole thing.
Yeah.
You feel that as well?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, look, and how can you not? Like, last year, I mean, I'll call it an overwhelming success. I mean, that was a team that was projected to win 3 to 4 games, right? And I mean, you double that in the regular season, and then just the way they looked in that bowl game. I mean, it was hard not to have, anticipation to begin with back in January, and then the news comes out about Rattler and Stogner, and I mean that just adds a whole new dimension. And it's scary, man. I mean, I think what South Carolina's been able to do, especially on the recruiting trail lately. I mean, it doesn't seem like the momentum has stopped for Beamer's staff here in the last few months, and it's, I mean, the NIL news yesterday, which, it was massive, and then you talk about just, okay, now we're only, 2 days away from, kickoff. I mean, how can you not be excited? And now we're talking about a sellout for the Georgia State game, which I assume that they might announce that today. I know they were getting close, but yeah, there's a lot to be excited about, man. And it's the biggest question though is, can they just do they have the talent and the power to match Georgia? And that answer this year is no, but I think they're getting closer for sure.
Closing the gap, especially our buddy Rick Sanford on the show has mentioned closing the gap between Carolina and Clemson, and I told him when he was on Tuesday, I think it's been a really big gap, so you better close that thing.
Yep.
The question now becomes how much and the whole deal, but first you got to get through a first test. How do you see this thing with Shawn Elliott? He's had his weekly press conference. I know. Did you sit down with him at his house? Is that where you did that thing?
Yeah. So he's got 2 houses, by the way, which I didn't know.
He's a football coach. Of course he does.
He's got one house on Lake Murray and then another house on another lake. So we sat down at, I guess maybe it's his second half of the summer home. I don't know. I'm not sure how these things work. I have one and I can't even pay for it. So
Mike, no one has a summer home in Columbia. Okay, nobody in the Columbia area. That is not a thing.
Well, that's what I was like. I mean, I love Shawn to death, but I'm like, I love Columbia. I mean, that's why I've been here for a while. But I'm like, yeah, if I was gonna have a second house, it would be like in Vermont,
right?
Like I would like get out of the heat for a while.
No, but that sums him up. Like he's from Camden, right?
Yeah.
Like that's his thing. He's got the Atlanta one. I'm guessing is the other one you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
With Georgia State, but he's never really left the area fully. That as I understand it, and Shane Beamer was kind of talking about that earlier, and you know more about it than I do.
Yeah. I mean, his kids, go to AC Flora. It's funny, like, you'll see him randomly just on, like the night before a game sometimes over at a Flora game. And it's pretty cool, man. I mean, I love that guy to death. He's the nicest dude. I mean, I know, you knew him when he was here too. And, I spent a lot of time, 7 years, at USC in sort of the heyday under Spurrier. So, I mean, the guy, and I'll never forget when you and I covered, the whole thing with Spurrier retiring, in my opinion. And then, the transition to Shawn Elliott. I mean, he was just so overcome with emotion. I mean, you could see just how much he loved loves this program, and I think it's going to be hard for him. No coach is going to admit that. No football coach is going to be like, oh yeah, it's going to. But you could tell there's going to be some emotion flying there for sure, and I think it's going to be really cool for him to take a program that he's built. I mean, 4 bowls in 5 years, 3 straight winning seasons. And it's almost, I don't think it's like hey, look what I can do, Tanner. I think it's more just like a pride thing, like very proud of his program that he gets to take, into his former spot. And I think it's going to be really cool for him.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily a personal type grudge. I do think it's a professional one, because I think he knew at the time he didn't have a chance to be the successor for Steve Spurrier. And he didn't have a chance. I mean, especially lose to the Citadel at that point. Maybe if you have some, it wasn't a Tommy Bowden, Dabo Sweeney type situation, but he probably thought it should have been.
Yeah, no, 100%. And by the way,
legit about that.
While we're on that topic, I think you got one of the best shots I've ever seen in sports.
Old Dabo jumping in the arms.
No. It was actually Sky Moore.
Wait a second. Pause for anyone listening or watching right now. This is called a TV nerd moment. Our apologies.
So Sky Moore, and it's awful. I mean, it's so bad, but that's our job, right? Is to basically document what happened. And I guess you had looked over, and Sky Moore was all by himself. This is right after the loss to the Citadel in 2015.
I have no memory of this, by the way. None.
Oh yeah, no, I'll show you. We have it. Sky Moore's sitting by himself on the bench. No one else is sitting on the bench.
Now I
it's him
remember.
alone, and he literally just puts his hands, puts his face in his hands, and it's just, I mean, the shot is just iconic, man. You nailed it, and it just sums up that. Almost like that whole season perfectly. Their defense was awful. Spurrier, their head coach quits on them. They've still got some sort of fight in them, but that just not good enough to even beat the Citadel. And yeah, man, it's but they've obviously come a long way since then. But looking back, it's like, I mean, I know hindsight's 2020, but Will Muschamp was the guy. I just I've never really quite understood that, especially having covered him at Florida. And I can feel free to say this now. A lot of the things that I had to hold back when he was here, but it's watching that program implode in front of my own eyes. And I'm like, this was a program that was phenomenal. You could not beat this program under Urban Meyer. No one was beating this program. And if they won by 2 points or a field goal. And, and to just watch it go from top 5 every year to not even top 25. I just thought to myself, there's no way that he's going to have success at South Carolina. There's just no way.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were with you, first of all. But then you look back at this revisionist history, Tom Herman was going to be the guy, right?
Sure.
Saw him flame out at Texas. Sure. Rich Rodriguez was another name. That didn't work out either, man. It just was a poor cycle. It was Lincoln Riley as kind of the, really? This guy's even in the mix at all? What are you talking about? Way too young, no experience.
For
Obviously, things have changed. You mentioned your Florida background. A couple of degrees from Florida, guys. Wanted to point that out. This guy, master's degree. Master Mike, we're going to call him today. So since you mentioned Florida, what do you think? Billy Napier's first game, Utah, 3-point spread at the Swamp.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest difference there just might be the atmosphere, right? I mean, you're talking in the off season. I mean, Utah's been practicing basically inside, is what I read, with the freaking air conditioning off. That sucks. And I mean, look, you've been down there, and I grew up down there. I mean, it's September games are awful. I mean, thank God this thing isn't at noon. Otherwise, people would be dying. I mean, sincerely, it's going to be hard for them. But I mean, the biggest problem with Florida is just the lack of anything offensively that you can really point to as a sure thing. Like, Justin Shorter is a great wide receiver, right? But again, Anthony Richardson hasn't really proven that he's an elite passer. He can run the ball really well. But again, like when it comes to his arm, we don't know. We don't really know. And Napier's made that point all summer. And, you and I have been doing this long enough to where, like, you can kind of read through or read in between the lines, right? When a coach is trying to say, especially when they say something over and over and over again. And Napier's been very adamant about the fact that Anthony Richardson doesn't have a lot of experience. And so that to me screams, give this guy some time. Like, it's going to work out. Let's all not abandon ship, after we lose to Utah on Saturday night. I think that's the hard, and just, the offensive line. I mean, his best offensive lineman, man, is a guy that he brought from Louisiana. So you talk about the state of that O-line. I mean, it's pretty bad. They lost Damian Pierce. And as a Florida guy, I will never forgive Dan Mullen for not using Damian Pierce the way he should, because my God, that guy looks incredible now in the league. There's just that there's so much turnover too. I mean, I think the defensive line is the best part of Florida. They return a lot of guys there. But again, it's just that sort of, there's so many unknowns with Napier and the system that he wants to run too, that, I'm just much more comfortable giving that game to Utah right now. If it was maybe the third game of the season, I would say maybe Florida has a much better shot, and I might favor them. But just the fact that, brand new head coach, still a lot of questions at quarterback. I don't know. I don't feel comfortable picking Florida right now over Utah, even if it's, in the swamp.
Sounds like you don't necessarily disagree then with Craig saying 31-21 Utah, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Daddy O pointing out a great point as well, especially from our SEC kind of perspective. Utah's best recruiting class in the last 5 is 30th in the country. Yeah. So I think that's why you're seeing a spread where it is. Right. And let's wrap up the Florida talk with your kind of summation, your summary.
Yeah.
The early impressions of Billy Napier. To me, that staff picture, that team picture stands out right now. 140 staff members. It's clearly a transition. How do you think it's gone so far? Where do you think it's going to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, it's almost like the anti-Mullen, like that's what they wanted to hire. It was the anti-Mullen, a guy who, really cares about his players, who puts recruiting over almost everything. And so I think it's going to work out for Napier and Florida. But again, what is working out? I mean, dude, you talk about the last 3. I mean, look, Muschamp had the second season. They won 11 games, I think, right? And then they got blown out by Louisville.
Easy. Oh, I got you. You're talking about the Florida second year. I was like,
yeah. So at Florida in 2012 or whatever that was, I mean, that was Muschamp's most successful season, and it just so happened to be his second season, just like South Carolina, oddly enough. But I mean, each one of those guys, check this out. Each one of the guys that got fired at Florida, the last 3 coaches, was at one point the SEC Coach of the Year. 2 of the 3 won division titles. And they still got canned. So what does success mean in Florida's eyes? And, that administration is so different than the one that I worked for, 10 years ago, under Jeremy Foley. I think it would have been a whole lot different, but maybe that's one of the reasons why Foley's, felt like he needed to move on after a couple not so great hires. I think that there may have been a little bit more leeway. I'm just afraid that, in 4 years, if they still haven't caught up to Georgia, it's going to be the same cycle again for Florida. And I don't know if there's a solid answer other than, let's blow it up and try again. Look, I mean, they've been behind. I've talked to you about this before. Florida has been behind in so many ways. I mean, when I got here to Columbia, I mean, I'm looking around, at the facilities game, and I'm like, holy God! I mean, how the hell hasn't Florida done this yet? I mean, Florida just opened their football facility this year, and I'm like, South Carolina's had theirs for what, 4 or 5? This is 2018, I think it opened. Clemson's had theirs for 6. Like, they've been way behind in this building game, and that's negatively affected recruiting. And so at the end of the day, I mean, I think they've made the right moves sort of off the field in getting back sort of to like where they should be in terms of like, construction and the things that, the bells and whistles that really sell recruits. But I don't know if that translates to wins for Napier. I really don't. I have no idea. And if it does, like I said, man, like what's winning in Florida's eyes,
Right?
Because you look at Dan Mullen's record, and holy hell, like, I mean, the guy that had multiple, more than 10-win seasons. I mean, they're a touchdown away from, beating Alabama in the SEC championship. They're a shoe away from, maybe going to the playoff. And it all came crashing down. So I don't know. I like, if Napier hasn't won a division title in 4 years, does he get canned? And, I think a big part of me says, yeah. And that's a lot of pressure.
Well, it's a monumental difference in the culture there and the culture that Shane Beamer kind of inherited and is dealing with. I think it's an advantage for Beamer from that perspective, not having just the highest of expectations. I mean, I can hear LSU fans saying, oh, great, they won division championships. There are only 2 out of the last 3 won division championships. They got canned. Our guys, national championships, the last couple of guys, they're still out of there. So, speaking of that, what'd you think about Lou Holtz? That was quite the clip that you got on the social media the other day. What was that? What's that all about, man?
I don't know. I think just the older he gets, I can cuss on this, right?
This is your show. It's unrestricted free agents, sir.
The less of a damn he gives, and it's weird. You and I have talked about this before. Like, Lou Holtz and I have a really weird relationship. Like, I think I interviewed him a couple years ago, and like, he just really liked the interview and like sent me an email that was just super nice, and I've got it framed in my office because it's Lou Holt, like he signed it, and like would occasionally text me about something. And he's just a nice man to me. I mean, and I don't know if I don't think he's been a nice man his entire life, but he and I have a great relationship. I just think that like the older he gets, the more he just doesn't care, the typical of a human being, right? Like, so he does know how to email. It's crazy. Oh yeah, here.
You got it right there. All right, now we're going on location. We're going.
Here we go. Right here.
Around.
Right here. There
so Chris says, so Lou does know how to email.
Yeah.
LOL.
Oh yeah. No, he knows how to email. He knows how to text too. But which is I feel like more impressive. But I mean, in terms of that clip, this was a couple months ago too, and I Saturday Down South I think put an article out about it, about how Lou Holtz would reach out to Brian Kelly when Kelly was at Notre Dame, and he would send some encouraging, probably emails.
He said he wrote him 8 letters, which I can...
So but again, like if it's Lou Holtz and you're Notre Dame, Like, you got to find a way to get those letters to Brian Kelly. And I'm not, like, so when I heard that, I wasn't immediately like, oh, well, Brian Kelly's just an asshole, even though I'm sure he is. I wasn't immediately like, oh God, this guy just has no respect for Lou Holtz. It just seemed like a loss in translation. Like, Lou Holtz is literally sending a letter to like the stadium, or something, and then it never gets to Brian Kelly. But the older he gets, man, I mean, he's told me things. I mean, I'm not going to share them, about it, Tim, but I mean, he's told me things that, he should not have. And, it's kind of like, that's pretty personal for somebody else. Like, I wouldn't just share that with a reporter, because you never know, you never know who's going to sort of, break that privilege, I guess, or that trust.
So fascinating to me. Like almost 20 years ago, I'm covering Lou Holtz doing your job, and he has the press conferences, the media availability after practice, which is a relatively small gathering, especially back then, because there are no websites.
Yeah.
Right. They just don't exist. So it's just us TV nerds and a few newspaper people. Right. And then at some point, if he's in a good mood, he'd say, all right, turn off the cameras. I'll tell you a story. And you just can't be that guy anymore. Right. They're not the two worlds. There's not public and private. It's not, especially as a big time football coach. So I feel like we're seeing that line disintegrate. And now we're getting a little bit more of who Lou Holtz really fully is, as opposed to the public persona from back in the day. Fascinating to see, man. I want to get more back into your special. So tell us, I know you said you had to condense it down to 30 minutes and 19 really of content, and it's a difficult deal. What do you think people watching on ABC Columbia? You said 7 to 7:30, or is it at 7:30?
Yes, 7 to 7:30.
Tomorrow night.
So yeah, tomorrow night, Friday night. So sorry for the Wheel of Fortune fans. That's, by the way, it's the most amount of emails I get every year. Friday night, 7 o'clock.
You know what you better do? You better write everybody back, or somebody's going to have a press conference eventually.
I should write them letters.
Write them a letter back. Well, maybe cut letters out of magazines, paste it together, and then if they're Wheel of Fortune fans, they'll enjoy that especially. But
do what my grandma used to do and like cut out coupons.
There you go.
Used to cut out. I don't know if your grandparents did this, but my grandma used to cut out coupons and send them to my mom in the mail. And my mom was always like, I get the same newspaper and magazine that you do. Like, I've got it right here.
She was scouting. That was a scouting service. Good for your grandmother. She could have started a whole industry there, but she let your mom get all the spoils. How dare the mockery? What about the special? Do you think people will attach to the most? What kind of stuff you got going?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the sit down with Beamer was great. Super candid, and I try to not just ask the generic stuff. When we get a sit down with him. So he gives me marital advice, which is great. I put that out there, I think a month ago or so, but that was pretty good. And then sort of the other jobs that he considered, which I found really fascinating. I asked him, some of the things, five reasons, Gamecock fans should be excited this year. And then, 5 things that are, keep them up at night. I think, it's good. It's a really good interview. I think the package on Spencer turned out really well. So yeah, happy with that. And then, we got in SC State and Coastal and did some of that stuff too. So it wasn't just all Carolina and Clemson stuff, but yeah, no, it turned out really well, I think. And I'm doing this thing now. We have a subscription service to a music company, so I'm doing a lot of stuff. Doing a lot of editing stuff with music now and highlights and trying to make it look, modern, I guess. I don't know. Maybe this was like 10 years ago, but in my eyes, it's modern. So yeah, I think it turned out really well, man. It flows really quick. It's fast because it's only 19 minutes of content. But yeah, I mean, main storylines, right? You know, Beamer's second year, Spencer Rattler, USC defense, and then, you know, is DJU going to suck again this year? And
I want some opinions on that. First, though, why don't we hear from Shawn Elliott in his weekly press conference there talking about Spencer Rattler, and then we'll start with him and go from there.
Yeah.
You know, what does Rattler bring to the table? You have to think a little bit more consistency in the throw game. You have to think their throwing game is going to be a little bit more enhanced. I think he's a quarterback that can make all the throws across the field, from your long post throws to your out routes across the field on the opposite hash. I mean, he's a quarterback. So there'll probably be a little bit more opportunity to go downfield. You know, I think even though a lot of people say they did not run the ball well, I think they're going to probably lean towards letting him make the difference in this offense and make more throws.
So I take away several things. My main takeaway there is Georgia State's got to up its weekly press conference game. We got to get them out from the brick wall there. We got to do so. We just get the backdrop, man. Get that thing sponsored. Come on, you're winning bowl games. You got multiple winning seasons. Let's step that up a little bit. First of all, secondly,
wait, I mean, come on.
Spencer Rattler is a quarterback. He did say that. He did the relatively generic thing you got to do in these weekly press conferences as a head coach. What is your expectation? I don't know what to expect, man. I know Spencer Rattler is talented. I know it didn't go well at Oklahoma. It didn't finish well. Let's put it that way. I know it hasn't gone well for most Carolina quarterbacks recently. And what I saw in year one under Marcus Satterfield, I know he was asked yesterday. He said he was proud of what happened. It came off, Craig said this morning, it's kind of defensive answer. Like, I would like to see what other guys would have done with the four quarterbacks we had. Well, hey man, if you're really confident and feel good about who you are, you don't have to say that kind of stuff, right?
Sure.
So I think this is a fascinating situation. Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
I think he's just tired of answering that question at this point.
But it's a totally fair question, man. Your offense stunk. You're the offensive coordinator.
It is, but at the same time, I mean, it's also September now, right? Like, you know, let it speak for itself. I mean, I wasn't there yesterday at that presser. I mean, obviously those are questions that you have to ask, but he's also been asked about that all off season. I mean, that's been a major storyline. It's not like, you know, this is the first time, you know, he's talking about it. My expectations for Saturday, listen, I don't think Rattler's going to throw the ball 50 times. I mean, and I think if he has to, then Carolina's in trouble, though. I do think it's interesting. Satterfield told us back at the golf event about a month ago that he was like, you know, we didn't bring Spencer here to run the football, which I thought was a really interesting quote. So I think they're going to air it out for sure. I don't think that they're going to totally rely on Spencer. I'm interested to see what that connection is with Stogner, and just how big of a factor that is. I mean, I've been sort of hyping it up. I think that's one of the biggest pieces this year that could really get Carolina over that 7 to 8 win mark, is just that connection between Rattler and Stogner. I think could be really, really important. I'd like to see a few catches, you know, from Stogner. I mean, this is pretty simple, but you know, not turning the ball over, right? Like, I think that's a huge, like, the offense doesn't have to be super, super flashy in game one, because you don't want to give anything away too. I mean, that's you know, you got to remember, like, everything is on tape now, right? Like, everything is recorded. And so, you know, if it's a little bit more vanilla, like, that's okay. Like, there's probably a reason. That's not going to be the offense moving forward. So I think just like taking care of the football, and you know, I would like to see them be balanced, man. I really would. Like, I don't want to see Spencer, you know, dropping back every freaking play. I want to see how Marshawn Lloyd does. I mean, he told me, he looked me in the eye and was like, "This is, I feel like better than I did coming out of high school. I feel confident now with my knee." So I want to see that 5-star running back right? That like everybody hyped coming out of high school. I want to see that 5-star Marshawn Lloyd who's hurdling safeties. I think that's going to be a big key to this offense. Getting CBS healthy, within the next couple weeks, another big part. But I just don't know really if you can. I know this is a really cliche answer, Tim, and you're going to hate it, but I just don't know if you can judge that much, right, on a week one performance.
No, I think that's fair, but we will know a lot about the Gamecock offense based on what happens in week one, and certainly through 3 weeks, I think we'll know a bunch about this
For sure.
this Carolina team.
Yeah. I mean, I I kind of point to the Arkansas game, because look, Arkansas is not Georgia, right? Like Georgia's defense is still incredible. I know they lost everybody to the NFL, but they reload every year. But aside from Clemson, that will be the hardest defense I think that Carolina has to face. So that Arkansas game, I really point to as okay. So you're not going up against Georgia State. It's not week one. You've had 1 week to iron everything out. You're on the road. How does this offense look? Because now you can open the playbook.
I'm going to stop you right there, man. They're a 12-point favorite. That's it. Georgia State beat Coastal last year.
Agree, man.
Hammered a Troy team that Carolina didn't.
Sure.
You got to do everything you can to win the football game. I think everything's on the table.
But they like to run the ball. They like to run the ball a lot. And I think the strength for Carolina this year is on that defensive line. So that's why I'm kind of like, I'm not taking it lightly, but I just think when you look at the matchups, I think,
right. Matchup guy. He's a matchup guy over there. You're right. The matchup isn't good for Georgia State if you break it down that way. So I understand what you're saying there. You mentioned Marshawn Lloyd. I wanted to play this segment of yesterday's press conference with Marcus Satterfield because I think it's a really interesting insight into what we've seen so far from Marshawn Lloyd and possibly what we might see, like you're talking about. Here's offensive coordinator Marcus Satterfield.
I think he, like a lot of young players, came in and was highly regarded as he should have been. He had the injury. He gets back last year. Things aren't just happening as fast as they need to. He put a lot of pressure on himself. To me, I see it more of obviously mature because it's his third year in school, but just confidence, understanding of who he is. He's not he puts pressure on himself to be elite. But last year it was just like if it's not a home run, he's just in his head a little bit. So I think he's like Josh, he's just a total different dude than he was at the end of the season, just from a mental standpoint. He's sharp. He about bit my head off today in backfield. I was like, relax. I was trying to take him out, so just kind of save his legs, and he about hit me. So I love his mindset, and he's everything good about what a college football student athlete should be.
That's awesome.
Again, a great reminder of why you let your coordinator speak every week in college football. Sorry, that's I'm still working through a lot of Muschamp baggage here, Mike. Still working through that, but it does tell me about the mindset. The fact that they had that interaction, that Lloyd is that kind of competitor, man, just gives you more of an insight. I know he's been featured a lot on that Welcome Home series there this preseason as well. There is a lot of talk around him, and that internal pressure we just heard about from Satterfield there. And he was talking about Josh Vann when he mentioned Josh too, just being pushed by the other receivers and having to have a bit more mature mindset, man. I think those two go hand in hand. I originally asked you about Rattler, right? But you brought up Marshawn Lloyd in the run game. If Carolina can't run, it's going to be very difficult for Spencer Rattler to go out and win them games.
Yeah.
If Marshawn Lloyd has a good year, I think Spencer Rattler is going to have a good year. And I think we're going to know it week one, Mike. If they can't run the ball on Georgia State, they ain't running it on anybody else. Maybe outside of South Carolina State and Charlotte, you got to be able to move their defensive line where you do have the advantage like you're talking about, and then you have a chance. It doesn't mean you're going to have a great year, but you have a chance to have a good year if you can do it in week one.
Yeah, no, 100%. And again, to your point, I mean, if you can't push Georgia State, then you're screwed against Georgia. But that's what I want, and I don't want to see a vanilla offense per se. But I mean, it's maybe I'm just thinking about it too much. I don't know. But if I'm Beamer, look, you've got Arkansas and Georgia, these next 2 weeks after Georgia State. So, I mean, I think you gotta save some of your plays. You got to rely on that run game, right? Like I know they want to go out and show, maybe a sold out crowd at Willie B what Spencer can do, and I think they're going to let him air it out. But I don't know if they're going to put up 52.
Sure.
I don't really see that happening. But yeah, no, Marshawn, you're exactly right. Like we will definitely know the state of Marshawn Lloyd, that offensive line, and that run game at 11:30 on Saturday night for sure.
Chris on Facebook Live says, I think Marshawn Lloyd getting most of the reps at RB1, he'll get in a groove and get hot. And if Spencer Rattler and Lloyd both have good years, that means the offensive line is having a good one as well. Craig's saying Lloyd's on a mission this year. Daddy-O saying a running back who can do backflips after knee injury seems good to go to me. Yeah, the athleticism is not in question, man. And to me, he's such an impressive dude when you talk to him. You mentioned him looking you in the eye, and he is really good at expressing himself. I think a lot better than a lot of football players are, especially at his age.
Oh yeah.
And to see how he reacts now to this season after hearing what Marcus Satterfield just told us about the pressure that he puts on himself and just the maturity now. If he can be able to relax and play football and kind of let those things come, then I think we might see him take that next step that is really going to be necessary, I think, in a lot of ways for the Gamecocks to be good.
My favorite part of that interview with him, he basically said, I don't know if you've seen this or not, but he said, I took my knee brace, right? And this was the night before fall camp started.
Yeah.
He took his knee brace and he went home, took it out of his locker, right, at USC, went home, threw it in his closet, and put like a bunch of boxes on top of the knee brace so that there was, in a quote from him, no bad juju.
Right. Didn't he preface all this by saying, I'm a manifestation kind of guy?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that sums him up real well. He's a thinker, and then actions like represent more than just throwing that knee brace in there. That was, hey, that chapter's closed, man. We're moving on, and I'm back kind of deal.
Yep.
How you got to do it on the field, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, and again, I think, a lot of people who have never torn and me included, but when you tear an ACL, I think it takes a long time for you to trust your body again, trust your knee, and when you're having to make cuts like running backs do, I mean, that's a really hard position to play after a torn ACL. So, I think now 2 years removed, I think you can just see it. Like he's a lot more confident. And again, like he said, he feels better than he did coming out of high school. So, I'm really hoping that we get to see him hurdle a safety. I really, really hope that we get to see that, because that will be phenomenal.
Mike, I can't let you go without talking about, and this was also part of that press conference yesterday. I'm not even going to tell you. I'm just going to play it for you. And if you don't smile out of this, then you clearly need to get more sleep.
He came up to me downstairs and he goes, Coach, I messed up. And I thought he was talking about in practice. I was waiting for him to say on that route. He's like, I just said something in that press conference. I think I'm going to be in trouble. And he told me and laughed about it. But
I ain't gonna lie, he's just gonna go out there and kill him.
He's big and physical and runs his mouth too much in press conferences. But other than that, no, he's
just gonna go out there and kill him. He's just gonna go out there and kill him. So
I'm looking for, good things, big things coming from Juice. He's a leader on our offense.
All right, you didn't that wasn't your initial reaction. I saw you as we were playing that. You did giggle. There was a laugh, a smile.
Dude, you know what's funny? I didn't even hear him say, and I was there. I didn't even hear it because he mumbles, right? He's a soft-spoken guy. And, the funny thing is, he's not the guy that you expect, right, to say something like that. And then all of a sudden, I think you put it out there yesterday, and I was like, wait a second, where the hell did that come from? I didn't even hear that. I don't know. I mean, I'm going to try to defend him. I don't know if that's exactly what he meant. I think some guys maybe just get a little nervous and they kind of mix words sometimes. But again, it's not like he went back and said that's not what I meant, but
he went to his coach and said, "Coach, I messed up." He knew he did it. Like, he might not have meant to put it out there. That's exactly what he meant. He thinks they're going to go out and kill Georgia State, and he should. And this is the thing that we screw all this up. Us media nerds, right? We say, "Oh, I can't believe we get these cliche, boring answers, the whole thing," and then we get an answer like that, and we play the. I edit it like I edited it. We play it like we play it, and it goes nuts in a lot of ways. But can't we get to this point, Mike, in 2022 where we can get away from this PC garbage in sports, especially now post-COVID? We're talking about sports. We're talking about a game. We get to go have fun. That's fun to hear. That's how players should think. We should not criticize them for thinking and expressing that. That's exactly what the game is about, especially when you're a wide receiver, especially when you're Cam Smith and you're a DB. They talk like that the entire game. Why can't we hear a little bit of it beforehand without losing our minds and saying, "Oh, I can't believe he gave him bulletin board material"? I think all that's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, because I think as sports fans, I think as sports fans, like there is such thing as bad juju, right? Like we're so maniacal as fans that like we want the edge in every, like we don't want to put something out there that the universe is going to say, well, okay.
But here's the thing, Mike. Here's the thing. You mentioned you never tore an ACL. We never played major college football. Okay. So we can't understand how it works. Right. I think it can work the opposite of our little hand wringing. I can't believe you said that kind of thing. Get out of here. Guys in his locker room heard that and we're like, we're with you, Juice. Yes. We're going to go out and kill him to make sure you're not a liar. I think it can work that way too, man.
Sure. No, absolutely. I mean, but again, from a fan perspective, right? Like, because that's all, or media perspective. I mean, not even that. I didn't even think it was that bad. I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, like, all right, this team's a little bit better than I think you're giving them credit for, which I think may have been part of the issue there for some fans. But I mean, look, like with some of the greatest teams, right? Some of the greatest teams in any sport have been the cockiest. Right. Like, I mean, I remember last summer we did this special on that Gamecock baseball team, right? Those two that went back to back. Those guys are some of the cockiest people I've ever met in my life. And I'm just like, no wonder you beat the shit out of Florida. Like, they were scared shitless.
I used to have it on my little intro of the show. Mike Ross said one of the reasons they beat Clemson is because they would talk it in a game and it would get in their heads, and that's one of the reasons they won.
Sure, but I think as fans, right? Like again, we're so crazy that we've been through enough losses that like we don't want to put it out there and then that be like the reason why Carolina loses, right?
It's so stupid.
It's crazy. It's crazy, but it's like, it's like sitting in your favorite chair watching the game, and if you don't, Carolina's gonna freaking lose. Like, I mean, anyway, I didn't think it was that bad. I think Georgia State's a little bit better, right?
No doubt. No doubt about that. But it's, again, you mentioned you were in the room or you watched it. You were in the room when it happened.
Yeah.
Right? And you didn't even hear it.
Even hear it.
I didn't hear it the first time. I was watching it. Like, I'm paying attention, and I have to go back and say, wait a second. Is that where he said it? Really? It's how, if you say it like that, man, those are the scary dudes, right? Like, if you're Cam Smith and you're running up and down the sidelines and you're pointing in the face, or who else has Carolina had recently that would do that and really irk a bunch of play? Was it Jamie Robinson who was Shi Smith got out of control? And, we saw this in the Muschamp era and the whole deal. And I get it. There's Muschamp baggage with all of this, right? But Juice Wells didn't play for Will Muschamp. And it's a different type of deal. And again, like Daddy-O said, it ain't bragging when you can back it up. I'm just jacked for Saturday now. Longest off season in recent memory, all caps. Like, to me, I think that's where you can give a guy like Juice Wells a bit of a pass for this thing. And I'm choosing to see this for the positive, for embracing like the competition, the target on the back that brings with it, the whole thing. Like, come on. And to hear Satterfield talk about just who Juice Wells is as a player,
right?
To me, I think then it makes a little bit more sense to me that's what you got on Tuesday, and it's what makes college football great in a lot of ways, man.
Yeah, and I mean, look, like, again, if he can back it up, great, right? But the guy's also never played an SEC game before, which I think is the most, which is even better. Like, honestly,
Exactly.
He's just like, you know what, we're gonna count. But I mean, look, this day and age, like, I think there's too much PR prep, right? From
Exactly.
you
Across the whole thing, right? Didn't Trump blow that up in the world? I thought he blew that up. It hadn't trickled down to sports yet in a weird way. Sports usually leads the way, not the other way around.
Right. But I mean, I also think that, communication staffs do a pretty good job of like, hey, these are the things not to say.
Sure.
Unfortunately for us, but I don't know, man. I get the biggest problem with it was just like that they're actually a pretty decent team that's had more success in the last 5 years than USC has. But
Right.
again, in order to get back to that point, you may have to just be, come across super, super confident and maybe like arrogant at times. I mean, look, like, again, some of the best teams that I've ever witnessed have been incredibly confident.
But we only call them incredibly confident because they won. You call them cocky and dumb if they don't, right? And then you got to be able to back it up. That's what it all comes down to. Hearing someone like that, to me, I translated to, I'm going to back it up. I'm putting it out there. We're definitely going to do it. And I think that kind of mindset does manifest itself a little bit, to borrow from Marshawn Lloyd, what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. And so when you first played the clip, like, the reason why I said it may not have been what he meant. And I think, again, like, we can go back and forth on this. I mean, he apologized to his offensive coordinator, right? So clearly he knew that he screwed up, he seemed really nervous. Like, when he came out to talk to the media, he seemed really, really nervous. And so I think that's part of the reason why I don't think I heard the clip, because
Sure.
I kind of tuned out. I was like, oh, this guy, they're going to
It
ask him.
happens all the time, man. And this is where major college athletic programs are terrible, especially when you see guys go on to the NFL.
Yeah.
I'm like, how is that guy the same guy?
Debo
Like, this
Samuel.
guy, yeah. I mean, go down the list. Stephon Gilmore, Sidney Rice, like these guys, they can express themselves. To me, how I translate it now is like, oh, they told them not to say certain things. They got so in their own head that they couldn't go out there with any kind of confidence and speak, because they knew that if they said one wrong thing, then the coach would jump them, and the whole staff, it would be against the. That's where you got to put some confidence in your kids, in your players, right? And you got to back up that whole, like, we recruit the right guys, we create the right culture. Well, let them talk a little bit, man. Let them feel comfortable, and give them a little grace, like Marcus Satterfield did. He laughed about it there. He didn't say, I can't believe you're never going to hear from Juice Wells again. Like, imagine how Will Muschamp would handle that publicly, like, if at all. He probably would say, next question, right? Or move on, like, not even address it. And it just creates that negative culture, as opposed to, I think, at this point for South Carolina, that it's a different type deal. And it's just fun. It's part of the fun of September 1st for me.
Dude, I'll never forget the first question I asked Debo Samuel his freshman year. It's like, you're getting so much love. Like, you could be a go-to receiver, freshman year. How good does that feel for you? And he just he looks over and he's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. Like, this kid needs some media training, like, now. And now, I mean, it's like he's doing podcasts, and I mean, It's like the whole world is open for him. And it's exactly. Kevin Kevin Harris was really shy in front of the media too. Yeah.
And you couldn't ask that. I mean, he's about as smart as of a player you can get. He's an engineering guy. There's no way you can tell me he can't give us something. But it's just, that environment, man. It's interesting to see how people embrace it or don't or react and the whole thing. And that I know it was out of kind of nowhere in a lot of ways, the Juice Wells thing, but
it was.
How he plays now on Saturday was already going to be a big topic of conversation for Gamecock fans, but specifically now because of this. And again, I think you almost had to split. Like, people love it or they hate it, and it tells a lot about them, I think, and who they are as fans. Like you talked about, there are plenty of reasons not to like that, and to wring your hands and say, "Oh no, here we go again." Right. And there are plenty of reasons to go the other way too, man. Dude, thanks for coming on today. We're out of time with that.
Absolutely.
Your 19-minute special is a lot different than our 2-hour program that we do every day. And I know it's going to be worth watching for sure, listening to you talk about how you're doing stuff with the music and editing and the whole deal. That's TV, baby. Well done. So 7 o'clock tomorrow, ABC Columbia, the preview special for college football at large this season. And that'll be as you're on your way to which high school game, Mikey, tomorrow?
Oh, River Bluff.
River Bluff. That's it. One game. You're big time in one game.
I don't even remember. Let's see. Lexington and River Bluff.
Okay, that's a solid swing.
Yeah. So no, it'll be fun, man. Now, God, football's back. It's crazy. But I do want to say this real quick. We need to stop the 7:30 kicks for my sake, not for anybody else's sake. For my sake, because
high school football.
No. For
college football. Oh yeah.
Like,
well, no. You need to stop 4.5-hour games. You need to figure that out, right?
True.
How about that?
True.
I mean, the NFL's got it down clockwork. 3 hours, boom, done.
Yep, done. Like, let's go. Yep. No, and now everything's going to get reviewed this year, and it's going to be miserable.
I love it. You came in with no energy, looking half dead, and you're leaving with the old guy, miserable, curmudgeon. Perfect. Well done. Way to bring it full spectrum.
Go on my front porch and just start yelling.
Full circle. Attaboy. Go get some lemonade. Get in the rocking chair. Mike Gillespie, ABC Columbia, ladies and gentlemen. Find him on Twitter, @Mike ABC Columbia. Watch that preview special. Thank you, Mikey.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Didn't mean to cut him off at the end. That button, I was a little quick on the trigger. It happens. We're past the 2-hour mark. If you stayed with us to this point, your support is appreciated much more than those other people. Just know that. Especially you guys in the, what do we got? 10-minute halftimes help. Absolutely, Daddy-O. Well done. Ashley, Roger, thank you guys for weighing in on the live chat. Craig, you're in there all day. I think you're making up for your terrible, terrible decision to buy concert tickets and to miss the first game on Saturday night. That's what you do. Chris from Spurs Up Show, we see you. Thanks for hopping in. All you guys. Got a little momentum ourselves for the show, for UFA, rolling into football season. I'm sure you guys can tell, jacked up about it, just like you are. Just like anybody, I think, with a pulse who loves college football, which I don't understand anybody else. Yeah, exactly, Jason. Football. Just, I mean, as loud as you want to yell it. I'm not going to yell it into the mic, but all caps, exclamation points, absolutely. Backyard brawl tonight. We're going to talk about it tomorrow. We're going to make some picks for the weekend. We got Savell Newton joining us tomorrow, first of his weekly segments. You know Savell's going to bring it. He's going to tell you what he thinks, good or bad or otherwise. He doesn't care what you think about it. Or that's not going to stop him from expressing himself. How about that? Oh, so excited about football season. Unrestricted free agent. Here we go into our first football season as a show. Thank you guys for being a part of it. And help spread the word if you can. Let's keep this thing going. Thanks for listening today. We'll do it again tomorrow, 8 to 10, streaming live every day. Comment, like, reply, all that stuff. Spread the word. Thank you. And that was an unsmooth ending to the September 1st edition of Tim Hill Unrestricted.